Hello everyone and welcome to the next character concept, and I have a really interesting one that will let us really bounce ideas back and forth as we go through. Bounce back and... That was just really irritating. I'm sorry, but I don't have a better idea to start the video, so I'm gonna leave it. Oh, God. Oh, look, in my defense, it does quite accurately introduce the defense hero we're going to talk about, who lets you play with the environment in a, well, kinda way. So, the real light bulb moment for this character is the hard light technology in Overwatch. I think it's fascinating, and I think it has so much potential yet to be explored and untapped, because essentially it seemingly can do anything, right? Like, look at Symmetra. All of her stuff is powered by Vishkar Corp's hard light technology, okay? She is from the Architect Academy, where they teach their architects how to manipulate this hard light for, well, their architectural endeavors. Obviously, Symmetra has weaponized it, which then is not a huge jump to say that there is some proper, real, shady uses of it going on within the Vishkar Corporation, because they're not exactly as squeaky clean as they appear to be. Really, both Lucio and Symmetra are not completely blind to that fact. Either way, that's not the point. Look at Symmetra's kit. You can have a short-range beam that effectively kills people. I can only assume it does something a lot more graphic than you're allowed to show in Overwatch. You have her turrets, which do an entirely different type of beam, but it's still hard light. You have her balls that go flying through the air, pass through people, also kill them, but again, it's hard light. You have her applying a shield across people's bodies that, I guess, absorb enemy fire, but that's also hard light. Then she can teleport people through space, but again, using hard light. It's like the, well, we have a problem. Hard light will fix it. I have a new problem. Hard light will fix it. My wife left me. You're on your own, Jim. And I kind of want to go for a way of using it that I think makes total sense, that lets you be super creative with your environment and will reward really good aim for those of you that like that kind of thing. So, essentially, for a quick background story, this character would be straight out of Vishkar, a crazy light bender named character name, known to Symmetra cause that is cool, reflecting your shot straight back at you, but not in a precise way like Genji do. You're probably getting annoyed now, so that's my cue to stop singing in the most white way you've ever heard anyone sing. But yeah, essentially, another student of the Architect Academy using some experimental new applications of the hard light technology. And for me, the most interesting one is the barriers, because they let ally fire through, but block enemy fire. And while that is more than likely just for a gameplay reason, to me, I'm gonna take that to mean that the hard light can be selectively programmed to do one thing if X happens, and another if Y happens, and this lets us create a really cool setup. In my mind, a good defense hero is able to prepare for the enemy in a meaningful way. Torb setting up a turret, Junkrat having a conch mine set up somewhere, or his trap, you know, something along those lines. So, to that end, let's start running down what this character can do. Beginning with their weapon. It is a hard light gun that fires shards of this hard light substance. Very much similar to May's icicle, it'd fire a little bit quicker and travel through the air appreciably faster while remaining technically a projectile, but the real catch here is that it can bounce once. So, you fire this pew and it will zoom through the air. If it hits no one, it will connect with a wall, an equal and opposite angle, bounce off it, and potentially then hit an enemy. So immediately, right, you have the applications of this. The enemy team is pushing in, they've not quite got to somewhere you can see them, you can start chain firing into the wall and getting some damage in and maybe even pick someone off. Because I would make this do appreciable bonus damage if you hit someone with the bounce rather than the initial shot, thereby encouraging some real awareness of where this projectile is going to travel to, its bounce angle, and where the enemy will be where that happens, rewarding some seriously good planning and aim. And this also means that even if you're in a close range 1v1 fight, you might be preferring to fire at walls so it bounces into the person you're fighting to kill them quicker than just directly shooting at them. You also have stuff like shooting it round a Reinhardt barrier, maybe bouncing it off the ceiling so it comes down and headshots him. You know, you've got some really interesting things. You can be like, oh, did you see it? Oh my god! Like, there'll be times where you just shoot it at a wall and then an elimination pops up and they're gonna be fuming on the kill cam, but you're gonna be sat there like, intended, that was pure skill. And that's always a memorable moment for both parties. So that is the base, alright? And that will give you a little hint as to where I'm going to go with the abilities. So the main one then is the ability to place a hard light panel on either the floor, a wall, or a ceiling. So this will be her E. You press it, you have a light blue targeting square, like for example May's wall, before you commit to where it goes. But it's a square, I guess, about half the size of Reinhardt's barrier. You place it down and it forms Vum from the center, and it's just there sitting very flush against the floor, wall, or ceiling. And the catch is it works differently depending on where you place it. If you put it on the floor, for allies, it acts as a mini jump pad, and this is something I think we've all wanted since they were introduced, a way for a hero themselves to generate an impromptu jump pad somewhere, just because the potential and fun factor of that is amazing. But this doubles up as letting them get to unique places in order to set up and prepare for the bounce shots properly, lets allies do the same, gives them a little bit of an escape if they're fighting someone, and just gives them a lot of utility. And then, if you are an enemy and you stand on this for what the other team is a bounce pad, well, you'll find that you can no longer jump yourself at all. So the light on the floor for an ally is accelerating the energy that you put into it and outputting more, but for an enemy is absorbing the energy they're putting into it and not letting them actually generate enough force to do anything. You could take this a little bit further and disable movement abilities in general, like a whole zone of Zarya rule, except you can still Wazda around and use your non-movement abilities freely, so obviously not as powerful, but imagine preemptively having that down when a Genji jumps in, suddenly finding himself unable to shift, but even more importantly, unable to start spam double jumping all over the place like a sparrow on cocaine, and he's there and he realizes and he's just like, NANI? And then you can turn around and be all like, and then charge up your weapon. Out of there. Sorry, I really hate trying to shoot spam double jumping Genji. They're just slowly shurikening me down while I'm just getting madder and madder that this is happening to me. Either way, my own personal failings aside, it's a really cool planning tool and a really effective way at shutting down super high mobility teams, which are certainly a thing. It actually lets you really somewhat dictate the pace of the game and really the flow of how an encounter is going to go down. Because if you know you're going to be facing that kind of movement disabling, you want more rocky, steady heroes on your team instead of people who rely on being evasive, and that's a cool decision to make your opponents have to take into account. And it also then compounds that your team knows that your opponent is taking into that account, and how can we then profit off that? And it has this back and forth interplay of tactics, which I absolutely love adding to my abilities. But by far the coolest one, at least to me, is how it works when you put it on a wall or a ceiling. Now, firstly, I'm going to say that this move would have 3 charges, and you'd start with all 3. Putting a panel on the floor or a wall or a ceiling uses a charge. You can have 3 panels up at once. The floor panels run out after a certain amount of time. However, the wall and ceilings run out after a certain amount of things have happened. So you could technically have all three set up and waiting. And why would you do that? Well, they function thusly. You put it on a wall, and then your allies and enemies, you can see this nice glowing square of hard light affixed to a wall, and you as a ally to this hero can shoot at that panel, and then your bullets or whatever you're firing will reflect off of it at an equal and opposite angle. Which means if you work well together with your team, place one in a good place, you can absolutely lay into the enemy team from relative safely because you are firing at them from round a corner as a unit. Now, this panel would last until it's reflected X amount of shots to stop anything being abused in relation to it. But how cool is that? If you get a feel for your enemy's attack habits, you can have one of these set up, wait till they're about to try and push or they're about to engage, and then go ham on the panel. Maybe it is above them on the ceiling so they don't even realize, so you can rain holy hell down behind a Reinhardt shield that's slowly walking forward, and effectively it just gives your team a limited version of the utility your main weapon has. And is that not awesome? Just think to yourself, right, across all the heroes, if you could actually do some cool bounce shots with what they do, how awesome would that be? And this hero lets you do that. Hell, you could be fighting someone one-on-one, and this person has helpfully put a panel on the wall behind them, so even when you miss, it'll hit the wall behind them and then come back for a second chance at hitting them. So, the big one then with this, if you set up two of these opposite each other, wait for the enemy to just be about to walk between them, tell your allied Reinhardt to put a fire strike in, then suddenly it's going back and forth until it uses up one of the panel's bounce count. And you've effectively weaponized in a way that makes sense in the world of Overwatch, and a way that is very helpful but not crazy OP, at least to me, in the gameplay sense. You have weaponized beams. And is that not freaking awesome for a character to do? Like, come on! That is so cool. You could have the enemy team able to see these panels and maybe shoot them themselves in order to destroy them. That might be more fair if this proves a little bit too good. But the point is, you can plan and execute some fantastically interesting plays that both you and the enemy team really have to think about. And that just results in a more engaging round of Overwatch. Oh, I like it. So, her E, a little bit more simple. You choose an ally, you give them 200 shields that rapidly decay, not as fast as Lucio, but pretty quickly, so a couple seconds. And while that buff is on them, any shots, any fire that they take is reflected off them randomly. So you're effectively wrapping an ally in this panel version of the hard light that you were using with the previous move. So if a Junkrat bomb hits their feet and explodes, they'll take splash damage, which will lower the shields and make the buff run out faster, but if the Junkrat bomb hit them directly on, it would bounce off as if it had hit a wall. And obviously this applies with hit scan weapons. In any and all bounce scenarios, a hit scan weapon would just obviously hit instantly having bounce. There's no real way around that, but it's also not an inherent problem at all. This is definitely not something that only works with projectiles. So you've got a cool kind of, you're fine from fire for a couple seconds. Only AoE is going to get you, and I think that's just really nice. It's kind of a actually interesting and useful version of the pathetic, here, have 25 shields that Symmetra used to have, which leaves the Ultima. And this one, I agonized over a lot. I wanted to do something involving, again, the actual weapon fire coming out of the other heroes. I kind of experimented with you just press it and then everyone on the map, when they fire their gun, the bullets don't come out, they just kind of hang in the air, and then when the effect ends, they then get the momentum that they would have had, so you could stack up loads of shots in one place, then it ends and suddenly they all fire at once, but it felt rather hard to justify, and there's just a lot of problems with it in practice. So what I've gone for is almost well, a kind of slow motion-esque effect. So you know how you can walk through a barrier in Overwatch? It's made of the hard light, but you can walk through it. But obviously these are used for architecture, so you can have a more solid version of this that acts as an actual wall. Well, what about the in-between state, where it's not completely like passing through air, but it's not completely solid either? It just gives resistance, like you have to force yourself through it, like wading through water. Surely you could have a almost solid but more like heavy viscous liquid level hard light. And imagine if you filled the area you were in with that, projected it out in say a dome shape or however you want to shape it, and then suddenly everyone there is having to struggle to just move. Well, that is very fun to play with. So you press it, and then an area around you, it can change size depending on balance, is now, well, heavy lighted. I guess it probably needs a better name than that. And this would affect both allies and enemies. While in the zone, you move super slowly, and any projectiles you fire also move super slowly through the air. Relative speeds, they're moving as fast towards you relative to how slow you're moving as if it was full speed. So let's say a soldier fired his rocket and you saw it and started slowly moving right as it slowly comes towards you. If you could have dodged that at real speeds, you could dodge it then, and obviously if not, then you couldn't. But the point is, it gives everyone this sort of just chill, just everyone chill and actually observe moment, because in terms of camera speed and looking round, it would be normal, so you could properly take in and observe the situation, and it would have this cool forced planning to act from everyone else. And you could have a Reinhardt come charging in at normal speeds, enter the zone, and then suddenly slow down, and you look to your right and you're like, no, as he's moving towards you, and you hold A and start slowly sidestepping, but you know that would have hit you at full speed, so you're just waiting for it to happen. However, the catch is, you as this hero that's created this zone are unaffected. So you're moving at full speed, and your shots are moving at full speed, which means you can kind of dance around people, well, Quicksilver style. And you see that Reinhardt that's charged in, maybe he's on 100 health. Normally that would happen too fast and kill your ally, but because you're moving normal and they're super slow mode because of the thick light in the air, you can walk over and give them a couple shots, and then suddenly they're dead. Now, obviously, this would only last for a very limited amount of time, because it could be quite abusable, but it would be a huge, impactful, just fight-changing ult for both teams that create this awesome, memorable moment of, oh, I remember the last game when we had that slow-mo on the point, and then I thought of that plan while we were doing it, and then we executed it as soon as time sped up, and oh, it was great. They didn't see that coming. Like, you can really create situations like that. Now, the one huge glaring flaw in this is how to deal with hit scan weapons, because obviously you can't just slow them down. And it kind of ruins the ulti if you have just a hit scan person shooting everyone to death on either team while everyone else is too slow to do anything about it. So maybe you just say it only affects the enemies. They can still fire hit scan out of it to give it at least a counterable weakness. But other than that, it's just a huge super slowdown and projectile slowdown that lets you really plan and deal with them almost at your leisure. Like hitting an entire team with a melee, for example. Just a different, really neat area control on a point, for example. But this definitely, to me, I will admit, is the weakest part of the character and the thing I struggle most on, because I love the rest of it. I think the rest of it would work beautifully in Overwatch and be a lot of fun and add really cool new gameplay dynamics, but the ult, and this is where I'd love to open it up to you guys. I want to know what ult you would give this character that makes sense, how you would balance it, and I want some cool ideas, because that discussion is what I'm all about. So yeah, let me know what you thought. Like you've enjoyed this, subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Rage gaming with the video flow, shenanigans in Overwatch, and his fans all know that every single thumbnail that this man makes without fail makes you do a double take, catching your attention with every verse. See, say that you need healing, but you're at his mercy. Get it? 'Cause it's a pun. On his channel, that's one of the better ones. Widow is venomous, I see no end to this. Cataclysm's imminent when rage is in his element. Pandemonium is not familiar with irrelevance. Maximum Genji beam, oh so elegant. Jokes so funny, causing you to cry. Editing is quality as the noon is high. Yo, concussion man, shoot to the sky. Cap it all off with a goodbye.